It's very important for us to understand, right? So desire in itself is stopping, and that is why it brings us the relevance. What has been happening in the preceding weeks for us to nail and understand that this is an important aspect. We cannot let it go. We have to be conscious, aware, and we move on. And by the way, in the Swami's 9-point of code of conduct for all the devotees of Satsang organization worldwide anywhere, sealing on desire is the 9th, and I would say the most important point in today's talk as we are sharing. So why we are discussing all this, why there has been repeated attempts for us to understand, is because it is a part where a devotee of Sai, if we call it, we must practice sealing on desires. These 9-point of code of conduct has been laid out by Bhagavan, and we have to, in some measure, apply it. So what do? Let's look at the organization structure. When you go to the office, you have a CEO and all those stuff, right? How we see and we measure out down to the employees, down to the base level. And let's see the organization structure of desire. How does it form? Where does it form? Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Madha, Matsarya. These are the 6 vargas, right? So who is governing them? Where is this current coming from? So when you go a little bit more, we start looking into this. Moha is a very big player, attachment. So all others may be offshoot of desire, fulfilled or unfulfilled, but Moha is the originator. And what is the originator of the Moha? The senses that we are working through in the world. And what is the originator of the senses? The big ego, I, Ahankara, right? So it's very important for us to understand the boss is the ego of all these guys, which has also offshooted desire. And once we know who is the boss, and once we control the boss, automatically the subordinate starts getting controlled. And that is where the mind, which is over the ego, because ego, Ahankara is one of the 4 aspects of mind, Manas, Buddhi, Chitta, and Ahankara. So Ahankara, and born out of Ahankara, attachment, because body attachment, body association, and then desires. So that's the organization structure of desire. Having known this part of the understanding, let's understand why sealing on desires. What's happening? Why are we so cheesed with this word sealing on desires? Don't we want a sealing on our houses when we construct? Don't we want sealing on the cars? Don't we want umbrella when we are going? There is some sealing required everywhere for certain measure of safety, right? Certain measure of control, so that no outsiders come in. Now, Bhagavan beautifully said to Dr. Karanjia, the Blitz editor, who was a very famous journalist, in that one of the speeches, he said, I can make Earth's kernel into sky, sky into Earth, and solve everybody's problem, but I don't do that. Man has to be remade in the God's image again. And then he says, in that particular interview, he says, God plus ego or desires is equal to man. In fact, he says God plus desire is man. And man minus desire is God. So Deha Bhimana is when you add desire to God aspect, it is Deha Bhimana. When you remove that, when you start connecting to the source within, it becomes Atma Vimana. And possibly there is the solution which lies. And whenever we get these sparks of connect in between, I think those moments we really live with Sai. The rest of the moments we are really living in the world as why, So until that happens, we feel we are not human. We are human beings trying to have a spiritual experience, whereas actually the case is we are spiritual beings who have come down to have a human experience. So the whole dimension of our existence changes. And this cannot change. This is Deva Anugraha. We have been so fortunate to have come into Swami's fold. Somewhere or the other, he has brought us. We have not been, there is no Purusharth for us. It is Deva, is Swami who has selected us to bring us because of our ancestors' merit, our parents' merit, prayers that he has brought us to understand that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. Now, when you start with the datum, with this reference that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, then suddenly you think, oh, am I supposed to do this? Am I supposed to do this? And then you start working on the introspection mode. Let's get into the next part. Why are we trying to do sealing on desires? Everybody has got good life. People have good life, great job, family, students, children going to school, parties, everything. But there is a lot of stress. I'm sure a lot of us are cross generations where we have seen 2 generations already or 1 generation. And we know how much stress has erupted in the last. Every day you see some of the Bollywood stars talking great about, oh, I've managed depression. Where has this depression come from? And if we are so happy and if we are living into the value system, why do we have a depression? And that is where we have to connect the desire and the ceiling on desire. There is a lot of opulence, lot of wealth, but there is poverty of use of wealth. So there is a lot of misuse happening. And that is why when all this happens, Bhagavan says, Deha Bhiman, when you are acting, when you are the doer, I am the witness, and ego becomes a big veil between us and God. Right? It's absolutely important. Bhagavan said, desire is a storm. Note these words. Desire is a storm. Greed is a whirlpool. Pride is precipice. Attachment is avalanche. Ego is a volcano. Discard desire and you are liberated. Now look at the pedestal desire he has put. You discard desire. That means remove it. That Brother Siddharth was saying. Only eradication of desire can lead us to liberation. What Swami has said. And that is where it says, you remove one and you get a bonus combo offer. Everything goes off, brothers and sisters. All right. So let's move on. This is important to understand why Bhagavan played so much of importance on sealing on desires. The world is really at play at the position what it is in. Global warming. You can see what is happening around in the world for a piece of land, expansionism. Who is responsible after all? And there goes the reply. Bhagavan says, man is responsible as a result of uncontrolled desires and reckless exploitation of natural resources, exhibiting frightening disorders, natural calamities like earthquake, volcanoes, tsunamis, droughts, floods. Everything is happening, brothers and sisters. Mankind today appears like a foolish man who is wielding the axe on the branch that he is sitting. It's so important to understand who is responsible. We have done karma and destiny in Singapore also, after getting inspired from what you all had a session. We all saw that. Who is responsible? God, me, his will, my will. Look at this answer. It tells, it clears everything, right? And then Bhagavan says, who can then cure this, take it out of this? Man has to slay the sixfold enemies that lead him to disaster. Correct? The poor individual ego, not knowingly, has harbored these guys, these sleeper cells within him. And all these sleeper cells, Kama, Krodha, Lobh, Mad, Moh, Matsarya, have started rising. Because desire is like a vicious circle. It breeds and it breeds and it multiplies. And we are all caught in that. All right. So it's very important to understand who is responsible, and desire is responsible, and our failure to control the desires, our failure to put reins on it. Now think about a car you are driving. If there is no ceiling, there is no control. If you don't have a brake, where do you go? Right? We straight away go a ticket to heaven, right? What about the horses? Why do we have the reins? Everything has got a control. So when it comes to desire, why so special? Why are we so itchy about it? It has to have something. And that is the control Bhagavan says. Is very important. Let's look at this 1.5 minutes of video, what Swami says, before we move on.
మూడవ శత్రువు మానవుని యందు నకసిక పర్యంతము ఆపాద మస్తకములకు కూడాను వ్యాపించి ఉంటుండాది.
The third enemy is spread from top to toe.
కామం హిత్వార్థవాన్ భవతి. అనగా కోరికలు అనేటువంటిది మానవుని యందు తీరేటువంటిది కాదు.
The desires cannot be fulfilled totally.
జీవితమంతయు కూడాను కోరికల చేతనే నిండి ఉంటున్నది.
The whole life is full of desires.
ఒక్కటి తీరిన తక్షణమే మరి 10 కోరికలు అభివృద్ధి అవుతుంటాయి.
The satisfaction of one desire would lead to many to follow.
మానవుని యొక్క జీవితమే కోరికల యొక్క మూట.
The life is the bundle of desires.
ఈ కోరికలను తృప్తిపరచుకునేటువంటి మానవ జగత్తులో కానరాడు.
There's none here in this world who had their desires satisfied fully.
కోరికలు ఉండినంత వరకు కూడాను వీనికి ఏ అభిష్టం కూడాను నెరవేరదు.
So long he has got the desire, he cannot be satisfied.
ఏ పదార్థం కూడాను వీనికి చేజిక్కదు.
He cannot have anything.
కనుక మొట్టమొదట ఈ కోరికలను అదుపులో పెట్టుకోవాలి.
Therefore he must have ceiling on desire.
ఏనాడు ఈ మానవుడు తన కోరికలను అదుపులో పెట్టుకున్నో అప్పుడు తన యొక్క సర్వ సంకల్పమును కూడా సిద్ధింపజేస్తుంది.
The moment he exercises check on his desire, he can have his plans executed.
సర్వ సంపదలు కూడా అతనికి చేకూరుతాయి.
He will be successful in all.
కోరికలు ఉండినంత వరకు కూడా తన ఎన్ని ఉన్నటువంటి సంపత్తు కూడా కోల్పోతాడు.
So long their desire, the existing wealth is lost.
So there we saw, straight from Swami's That is, sealing on desire is essential. All right. So now let's connect some of the parlance from the Bhagavad Puran. You know, there's a story of Gajendra Moksha. We might have heard, some of us might have heard. There was this elephant who was in his previous birth a king, a very great devotee. However, he was cursed by one of the rishi and he became an elephant. And that would have been the last avatar why he came on board. And then when he went into this particular lake one fine morning, there was a crocodile waiting. And the crocodile snapped and held on to its feet. And the Gajendra Moksha, the tussle went on for years. Finally, tired, crying, helpless, as we do, you know, we try everything to solve a scenario. And when we don't, that's the time we become Mira. And that is when miracle happen. You know, when Mira call goes, miracle happens. Brothers and sisters, till that time, we try to put everything. And this is what Gajendra did. Gajendra Moksha, the elephant, tried, he could not. So what does Gajendra Moksha do? He started praying. He plucked up a lotus. Lotus is like, you know, you pay advance for a food delivery or something. So he paid this lotus. He gave that prayer in advance for some of the, you know, prayers result that God will come and liberate him. And so it did happen, because when you pine deeply, when Draupadi did, finally as Hridayavasi, Lord Krishna appeared, and that's where Narayana appeared. Now, this is a very symbolic story. It also tells us that it's nothing but when Gajendra Moksha, he represents the jiva, like one of us caught in the cycle of life and birth. The lake represents Maya or samsara, and the crocodile is the desire, the materialistic desire. So when it catches us, it's difficult to come out of it, brothers and sisters. It's only when you surrender the lotus, that is a surrender, when it goes out, then Bhagwan thinks of coming in. So it's very important for us to understand this part. And even in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, material desires, when unsatiated, generate anger, and thus the mind and chest become agitated. Therefore, one must practice to control them. You know, in Kerala, they have elephants. So sometimes you see these baby elephants, when they come, they tie a rope, a thin rope. So the baby elephant sees a rope from the time it cannot break because it's small. But when the elephant grow up, the rope is the same, but the elephant still does not come out. Why? Because it has been conditioned. If it gives a pull, it can, but it doesn't. And this is what has happened to all of us, right? We have got conditioned into this material world understanding and then got tied up within that, brothers and sisters. And that's exactly what the story is. So in two cases, elephant can come out. या तो हाथी पागल हो जाए, ईश्वर कृपा हो जाए, या तो भक्त एकदम दीवाना हो जाए मीरा की तरह. Then you are out, then you are there, one with them. और उनकी अनुग्रह से कुछ भी हो सकता है. I remember there was one small story in Radio Sai where Odisha Sevadal was there, and there was a sewage line which was blocked. Everybody was looking into that in Puttaparthi, how to do it. And this man from Odisha, he jumped in, rolled up his sleeves, cleared the sewage line, came out. Evening, he went for the darshan. Just normal, because he used to go in the evening. Swami came straight to him apparently and told, you will have no more birth. Brothers and sisters, ek kshan mein paar karwa diya Bhagwan ne. And this is what is important for us to understand. His anugrah can do anything. But till we deserve, we desire more, you know, than being deserved. So how? Let's look at this. Desire, demand is a manifestation of a desire. More luggages, Brother Siddharth spoke so beautifully earlier that we have loaded up. In fact, Bhagwan says that even in the train you go in, you are putting the luggage on your head, thinking that, you know, I cannot put it anyway because the load will go off. And most of us are like this dog with a bone which is chewing it, blood coming out because from our gums. And we think that the blood is coming out from the bone, and we enjoy and we chew more and we hurt more. And it goes on and on, brothers and sisters. It is something that we need to realize and understand. Bhagwan says, as long as the eagle is flying with the fish on the beak, it will be followed by the crows. And the crows will not leave it. Similarly, as we carry on with our desires, misery, taklif, you know, disappointment, demoralization, depression, all these things will keep chasing us. And the moment we leave that, as you can see, the monkey has held the the banana, it's not leaving it, but the hand is stuck, thinking that it is stuck inside. And this is what is happening to us. The eagle is not leaving the fish. The crows are chasing. We got to leave it at some point of time if we want to get liberated from this, come out of this. And that's where it again connects. And Bhagwan says in this beautifully, as the eagle gives up the attachment to the fish and drops it from the beak, the crows fly and the fish after the fish and leave the eagle free, so too when you give up the sensual pleasures, the crows of pride and malice will fly away. So now we spoke about why, what is sealing on desires, and Bhagavan explains here beautifully. Man is deluded by unlimited desires. He's living in the dream world. That is why it is important for us to keep desires under control and place a ceiling on them. This is the real meaning of ceiling and desires. He's talking about spending less money instead of, saving it for others. And then he goes on to say, do not give to others while allowing your. Now look at this beautiful line. We do a lot of charity, right? Tomorrow we see somebody, we give. Narayan Seva, we give. But then we go to another 5-star hotel. We don't compromise and do anything less on that. And this is so beautiful. It hit me also very well. Do not give to others while allowing your own desires to continue. That is not seva. That is not sealing on desires. While you continue with your own, you have to sacrifice. अपने एक अंश को देना है. That is sealing on desires. अपने इच्छा को मार के देना है. And that is important. Desires are like prison, Bhagavan says. Man can be freed only by limiting his wants. You should give up desire only for the life. Give life. Only the bare necessities should be considered to be required. As we all know, I want peace. Everybody says, right? I also say. Whether we deserve or desire, I don't know. But we all say. And Bhagavan says, I want peace. I is the ego. Correct? I is the ego. Want is the desire. And then he goes on beautifully to say, remove ego I and remove the want. And what you have left with is just peace. Very simple statement. But look at the power this statement has. The complete gambit of what our discussion is in this statement. Remove the I, remove the want. Is it so easy, brothers and sisters? No, that is why I think this is the fourth session we are sitting in together. And perhaps more we have to do as an individual sadhana to understand and work more on this. And then he goes on to say, unlimited desire lead to sorrow. These handicap to one's spiritual progress. Limitless desires destroy one's happiness. If we fry the seeds of desire, now look at this, when you have a groundnut, you put it down, it germinates. But the same thing when you roast, you put it down, it doesn't germinate. And Bhagavan says, you roast them, you fry the seeds of desire in renunciation, in vairagya, in viveka, then perhaps this desire will not germinate. If a desire is fulfilled, it results in greed. Now look at that. If it is not fulfilled, it results in anger. Sealing on desire is essential for a healthy and happy life. You can be happy once the desire, I've just highlighted, so I'll go through that. And it's important, you can be happy once the desires are controlled. And then he says, so sealings on desire is what you want to adopt today. You have to cut short your desires day by day. He doesn't say all of a sudden. Start gradually doing. There was a guy who was smoking cigarette and he went to one of the sadhus and sadhu said, okay, I can stop this habit of yours. Do one thing. Every day you light, I will smoke quitting with a chalk. And he started writing. And when the chalk, you make the cigarette only up to the length of the chalk. Progressively over a year, as he kept writing, the chalk was, abrading and eroding, and then smallly, giste, chalk became very small, and finally he could manage to. That's what Swami says, day by day. Of course, we didn't get the luxury of doing day by day. I remember pre-1995, we were all eating chicken, mutton, fish, egg. So chuhe kha ke billi haj ko chil, that was the case, and we were doing it because in our part of the world it was allowed, and socially. I was on the ship sailing out at seas, and then Bhagwan's this speech came in the Sanatan Sarathi. While they all got to know before me, when I landed a couple of months later, because those days phone call, email was not there. I used to get a letter once in 2 months, brothers and sisters. Those with the email and SMS, just think how fortunate you are. Okay. So when I came back from the ship, the first thing my mother did when she opened the door, you see, I've come after 11 months. She opened the door, Sanatan Sarathi on her hands like this, and said, Baua, look at this. I haven't entered the house. Trust me, brothers and sisters. I'm telling you the truth. She says, see, Swami, what he has written. First of all, to laga pair ke niche zameen nikal gayi, because sadiyon ka khaya hua bechara garib brahman karega kya. But anyway, when you love Swami more than anything else, I think anything is possible. And I think that was the moment, not the day, I would say. That was the moment after which we have never looked back. At least because I got it. And brothers and sisters, they already left earlier than that. And that is important. Then Swami says, happiness begins to dawn when the desires are totally eradicated. When you reduce your desire, you advance towards a state of renunciation. This instinct of ego and attachment will put you to suffering. You will be blissful the moment you give up. Again, he comes back to the root cause, ego and attachment. Ego and attachment, brothers and sisters. So now we have spoken about why and what. Let's see how sealing on desires, we can try to work towards, inch towards it. The first and the foremost thing is to understand what is the need. If it is a need to have a house, yes, everybody needs to have a place to live in, to have some food, to have a basic part of, a donation that you do, a small car if you have, or a scooter, whatever it is, and to differentiate between a want. So very important part is this part of understanding clears us what do we need and what do we want, right? As sealing or desire is to non-violate the limits. That means if we don't cross the limits, if we don't violate the limits, then we have ended up doing sealing on desires. It helps us to differentiate between need and the want. And then Bhagavan goes on to say, don't waste food, don't waste time, don't waste money, and don't waste energy. Everything is covered in this, brothers and sisters. These are the 4 very, very important pillars of sealing on desire. And this is actually our day-to-day interaction that we have with all these stuff on a daily basis, where we engage and where there is a scope of wasting, right? Individually, to explain food is God, and Bhagavan says, don't waste food. Food is God. Your body is made up of food. You are the result of the food eaten. Annam Brahma. Do not throw away the food too much and don't take it. Normally when we go for buffet dinner or the wedding dinners or somewhere, we tend to overeat, right? And that is important. I just had a dinner. Of course, I ate less than what last time I did, because it is again kind of a set meal, but I did have little more, to be very honest with you. Yes, that is what it is. But we should not waste it once it has come. And I remember that Swami Karunin, the story where Bhagavan says, when they were in, I think, Dharamkshetra, and then when Swami Karunin looked out of the window, he saw some of these urchin boys, they were picking up food from the waste. And then he says, Swami, the Purna avatar is here. How come in your presence, these guys are picking up from the waste? And when Bhagavan says, you see what you see with your eyes, I see their whole account, the whole life. In previous Janma, they have been wasting food, what they are collecting now. Brothers and sisters, just relate this example, this story, this lesson, what Bhagavan gave. It's so important for us to understand life is resound reflection and reaction. It's very important. Time is God. Let's not waste time. And then Bhagavan goes to say, time wasted, life wasted. God is exalted as Kalaya Namaha, Kala Kalaya Namaha, Kala Titaya Namaha, Kala Swarupaya Namaha. That means everything is embodiment of time is God. So we should not waste time. Then comes to money is God. Again, this is something that we all know. This has got a big scope of getting wasted. And we will always have a reason to justify the wastage. We'll always have a reason to have a double standard that why I did it and why the other person whom we come across, we ridicule or we say, no, he didn't do it right. Energy is God. Very important part is don't waste energy. People waste the energy by indulging in gossips, bad thoughts. Look at the way he has gone. Bad thoughts. That's also energy wastage, right? What we are thinking, bad looks, bad hearing, bad action, everything. So these are the 4 important pillars around which he has laid down the part of the sealing desires. When we are gossiping and excessively talking, brothers and sisters, is wasting of energy and time, Bhagavan says. If you have to talk, is it necessary? Is it kind? Is it true? Will it improve the silence? These are important parameters and benchmarks Bhagavan has told us to understand. Do we actually apply these filters when we talk? It's very important to be conscious that how much we speak, what we speak. At least we should not speak to hurt others. If it is hurting, let us control over there. All right. We can start with one of them and gradually expand them. Let's not waste money. When I was in Singapore, I lost a lot of money here. But again, I take it in the stride in the sense that it's not affordable money. It's a lot of money. But I used to get some money from let's say from the bank, or, I used to buy cameras and just go and give anyone and just pick up a camera and give it to one. So there was no respect for money to the level that it should be. And brothers and sisters, after that series of years, I lost this huge amount of money. Automatically, sealing on desires has been taught in some way or the other, correct? Now my respect for money is much more. The control is much more. So it's important. We all learn from experience, but if we get from his word and learn it and put it, I think then we are well ahead of the others. Now, Bhagavan has said our body is a limited company, correct? with whether you call it a blood pressure or a temperature. And why do we want ceiling of desire? Because everything is working under limits. He says the body can be called a limit company, hence we should observe these limits while making use. Whether it is food we eat, कभी कभी बहुत ज्यादा खा लेते हैं तो फिर मैं रेस्टोरेंट में ही पूछ लेता हूँ भाई आपका हजमोला या डाइजीन है, correct? It is important because we have crossed the limits. When you cross the speed limit of a car, brothers and sisters, you get a ticket. I got a couple of tickets in Singapore. After that, I become a very good boy. नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं, 80 के ऊपर जाने का नहीं, because we cross the limits. So whenever we cross the limits, there is ceiling of desires. If you expand this version to every aspect of life, it will save us. The stress and the depression is all what? It is nothing but wasted thoughts. It's so important. I remember from energy point of view, when Swami Vivekananda, I heard this one of our talks, they were coming by the ship from US, and the ship happened to refuel and stay at Cairo, which was in Egypt. And this is written in the book biography by Emma Khalve. You know, she's a very famous operatic singer, and she has written about it. So when the ship stopped in Cairo, a lot of people, they went down. They went down to have, move around until the ship is getting refueled. And there was jostling in one of the gullies. There was a lot of sound, nows, whistling sound, and Swami Vivekananda wanted to go there. This is, no, sir, no, Guruji, aap wahan mat jaiye. This is not your place. Then what is there? He's saying, no, there are women there, and this is what happens there. Swami Vivekananda said, I must go there. And then he goes there. Look at this example. Why he's Swami Vivekananda? He goes there. He looks into the women there who were half clad, into the eyes, and it says, sisters and mothers, why have you invested your divinity in your bodies? Why have you invested your divinity in your beauties? The same women who were standing there, the first time they put their hands on their face and said, this is the first time we felt the spark within us got tinkled, and we felt this is the man of God. Dithyos embryos, the man of God has come. Look at this chastity. Look at this control. Look at this ceiling on desire. Swami Vivekananda prophesies, brothers and sisters. It did not violate the limits. So it's very important for understand why ceiling on desires, because we all work in a limited company called body, which has got all the limits. If we violate, we are going to pay fine for that in the form of health or finance or whatever it is. And then Bhagwan, this was a beautiful article in Radio Sai, which says MAD syndrome. Just remember MAD, momentary attraction distraction syndrome. And that is what desire does. Suddenly you get, like I got attracted to a TV, and then suddenly I said, no, my inner voice came and said, no, hello, only one is okay and the other one. And then I stopped. Now, what is this MAD? Bhagwan explains. The moment you are attracted towards something in your mind, arises a korika. Korika is a materialistic desire. The moment you see something which is, pleasing to senses, and if some reason this desire is not met, okay, Sati Drishti gave rise to korika, and if it is not met, it leads to disappointed, which is called badha. So this is called MAD syndrome, MAD, momentary attraction, detraction. It goes on, brothers and sisters. If your pockets are full, you've got money and bonus, possibly will go topple and go say, okay, let's buy it. If it is less, man maar ke baith jata aadmi ki agli baar kuch lenge. That is not ceiling on desires. Ceiling on desires should be a voluntary, a very pleasant journey where you say, yes, I choose not to succumb. And if people try to somehow manage it, then what happens? Unfulfilled desire leads to anxiety, anger, depression, and it becomes a prey to all this disease and sorrow, brothers and sisters. All right. So it's very important for us to understand this. There's a beautiful saying. When Rumi was asked what is poison, let us all understand it very clearly. He says anything which is more than our necessity is poison. Whether it is power, wealth, hunger, ego, greed, laziness, brothers and sisters, expand it to anything. If it is more than what is required, becomes a poison. And that's a beautiful definition. Even, this Paracelsus, this guy was a great physician, chemist, botanist, and astrologer. And he said the same thing. He said, poison is in everything we do. Even खाना जो है हम उसमें भी poison है, लेकिन मात्रा का फर्क है. अगर हम उस मात्रा को बहुत बढ़ा देंगे तो वही हमारे लिए जहर हो जाएगा. So it's very important to understand and relate how ceiling of desires beautifully, the ever knowing, omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent Lord. You know why there is Om, Om, Om in every word? Because the word Om is there, so he is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, because the whole thing started with another Brahma, Omkar, right? So Bhagavan says here beautifully, a person filled with greed, fear, anger cannot achieve anything. Excessive desire degrades him. You cannot give desires entirely, but there should be a limit. And then he says, the Gita clearly declares desire as Nitya Shatru, permanent enemy of a man. Hence, keep desire under control. Embodiments of divine. Always remember, a person without pride will be liked by everyone. Secret to be free from grief is without hatred. One who has given up desire is free from worries. So, brother, just one thing, brother Siddharth, is okay to continue, or you want to? Okay.
Carry on, carry on.
Okay. So, and then my mother used to very famously and fondly tell us, limit to limitless by observing limits, Bhagavan has said. She will always say that. Now, what is this limitless? Suppose you are putting limit, how can you be limitless? Tell me one thing. If you are putting limits, you cannot be limitless. But you become limitless by the sense of control you develop, by sense of patience you develop, by sense of love, sacrifice, जो compassion होता है ना, ये सारी चीज आपके अंदर limitless हो जाती है. And that is what she meant, limit to limitless by observing limits. How do we deal now with desires? We have spoken all this about, let's see what we can do with desires. How do we deal with this? We can succumb to desire. There's a first way, desire आया, कुछ मन किया खा लिए, मन किया खरीद लिए. That is one aspect, succumbing to desire. But is it good to succumb to desire? ये फोटो देख के तो नहीं लगता है कि ये सही चीज है. What does succumbing to desire mean? It's like there's a fire. Instead of putting water, you're putting petrol. आग और बढ़ेगी, तृष्णा और बढ़ेगी. तृष्णा कृष्णा के लिए नहीं बढ़ेगी, तृष्णा संसार के लिए बढ़ेगी. So it will keep the cycle on. The vicious cycle will start. मजा तो आया. And then जब मजा आया, वो चख लिया शेर ने खून, अब चालू हो गया. And then you go after from iPhone, you go to Samsung, you go to another one, and then it is unlimited, brothers and sisters. You start with a Maruti 800, you end up buying a Mercedes, and you don't know where your life has been. It's very important to understand we cannot succumb, because when you succumb to desires, it leads to greed. And this is where our Balvikas or children should be told. And I'll come to a beautiful part of it. How do we avoid getting succumbing to desires? The second part is suppress the desire. ठीक है, चलो भाई हम सकम नहीं करेंगे, बड़ा ज्ञानी हो गए, आज सीख लिया, अब से हम कल सप्रेस करेंगे. अरे नहीं नहीं चाहिए, अरे नहीं नहीं चाहिए. You start suppressing. But this helps only temporarily because it backfires. ये हमें हर साल 2-3 बार मिलता है नवरात्रि में, 2-3 बार मिलता है जब हमने भी रखा था वो रोजा का फास्ट. और इस तरह के जब फास्ट होते हैं ना, जब आदमी काफी स्लो हो जाता है मेंटली, लेकिन फिजिकली काफी तेज रहता है. क्यों? क्योंकि वो जो खाने का समय जो आएगा, ये सप्रेशन के बाद वो बांध फूटती है. It's like a dam bursting out. So suppression of desire leads to, it also is one thing, it's like a spring effect, brothers and sisters. It's like a coiled spring, and then it bounces back. The other sad effect of suppression is also, it's like deprivation. That means you're deprived yourself. You have not controlled it. You have not, conditioned it. You have deprived. So there is a resentment. There is a disappointment. It leads to anger. और किसी दूसरे को अगर मिल गया और आपको नहीं मिला, जो कि हमारे ब्रदर बोलते थे borrowed desires, ये आपको एक एंगर, एक jealousy, एक अंदर में कुंठा आ जाएगी, right? So possibly these two are not the best of ways to deal with the desires, but there has to be some way to deal with it, right? Now what third part is sublimate. Sublimate is उसका रुख ही बदल दो, उसके nature, उसके DNA बदल दो, correct? The third way is to sublimate. What we can do is to replace with some higher self objective. Apne senses, again, it doesn't come overnight. It has to be conditioned. It has to come with maturity. It has to come with a lot of grooming, right? So if it is one side we believe in spending in getting and forgetting, or spend in giving and forgiving. अगर हमें लॉटरी मिल गया है, हमारे पास ऑप्शन है, तो हम गेटिंग एंड फॉरगेटिंग में भी कर सकते हैं स्पेंड. तो सकम और सप्रेशन में आ जाएगा, सकम में आ जाएगा, लेकिन गिविंग एंड फॉरगिविंग में आ जाएगा सब्लिमेट में. आपके पास पैसा था, आपने उसको ऐसी चीज के लिए यूज किया जहां ईश्वर तक वो पहुंच गया. बाबा आमटे कहा करते थे, द फेमस सोशल वर्कर, when he used to say there was a mandir near his ashram, and people used to ask him, why don't you go to the mandir? Baba, I see you always here, you don't go to the mandir. He says, मुझे मंदिर जाने की जरूरत क्यों है जब नारायण खुद ही मेरे पास इन लोगों के वेश में चल के आते हैं. Look at his level of existence, sublimation. He used to exist in that. So when we get money, either we spend in club and dance or divine romance. भगवान का भजन अरेंज कर दिया, कथा अरेंज कर दिया, साइंस सेंटर में चले गए, कुछ अरेंज कर दिया, स्पेंड इन द बार और स्पेंड इन दरबार, ऊपर वाले के दरबार में या बार में, ये सारा चॉइस हमारे पास हर क्रॉस रोड में रहता है। अगर कार हमने लिया तो कार के साथ हमने संस्कार और परोपकार वाला दिया कि नहीं दिया? दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट ब्रदर्स एंड सिस्टर्स। आप सारे न्यूज सुनते हैं, कितने उटपटांग न्यूज आ रहे हैं। Why? Because somewhere we have not tried to burn those seeds which can germinate. पुराने संस्कार आते हैं, हम सब लेके आए हैं। You know, we all have come with a bag of desires have come with us. वो हमारे सूक्ष्म चेतना में आया है। लेकिन अगर हम स्वामी को पकड़ के, इनके चीजों को पकड़ के, if we are not able to bury them or burn them, it will keep germinating, brothers and sisters. So कार लेने में प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। जैसे हमने भी यहाँ गाड़ी ली थी, यहाँ पे गाड़ी काफी एक्सपेंसिव है, क्योंकि गाड़ी का वैल्यू मान लीजिए 10 लाख है, तो पेपर का वैल्यू 10 लाख है। बट लोन मिल जाता, 100% ले लेते थे, कर लेते थे वसूल। बट एक ही चीज मैं अपने मेंटल लीज में रखता था, भगवान जानते हैं कि हे ईश्वर, ये गाड़ी में जितने भी डिवोटीज हैं, जब भी भजन हो, सेवा हो, सबको लेके मैं छोड़ू, लेके आऊं। और वाकई लास्ट तक उन्होंने किया। और पॉसिबली यही रीजन है कि बहुत भयंकर एक्सीडेंट हुआ था, मैं कभी बताऊंगा अगर आज मौका मिलेगा। 2015 में ये गाड़ी पलट गई थी 150 की स्पीड में, 170 की स्पीड में, और मलेशिया जैसे हाई रोड में कैसे उन्होंने बचाया। सो दिस इज इंपॉर्टेंट दैट राइडिंग अ कार इज नॉट अ प्रॉब्लम, बट उस कार में आपने किसी को साथ दिया, किसी को छोड़ा, किसी को हेल्प किया, किसी को मदद किया। कोई बैठ गया तो कोई, जैसे हमारे फ्रेंड्स हैं, उनके कार में कोई दूसरा आदमी छू भी लेता है, या उस कुछ खरोंच लग गया या ऐसे लग गया, बाप रे, यू शुड सी। सो दैट शुड नॉट बी द केस, राइट? सो रिमेंबर वन थिंग, व्हेन कामा engulfs your mind, then God ceases to exist. When desire ceases, you know, desire capture कर लिया। When kama में आपने आर जोड़ दिया, रामा, which becomes a karma, karma yoga, then desire ceases and God ceases. दोनों सीज अलग है। So it's very important for us to understand, कामा में दिक्कत नहीं है, लेकिन उस काम को अगर हम डिविनाइज कर दें, उसमें ईश्वर को साथ लेके चल लें, then I think we have been able to convert that into one of our KPIs, spiritual KPIs, as Bhagwan has laid down. Bhagwan says desire is not a problem. He says desire very often leads you to vairagya and mumukshatva. Correct? आपने डिजायर किया, आपने किसी रिश्तेदार के लिए डिजायर किया, आपने दोस्ती की उपेक्षा की, वही डिजायर आपको वैराग्य भी सिखाएगा। वही डिजायर आपको, या तो आपको सब उसमें सकम होना सिखाएगा, यानी कि आप उसमें धंसते चले जाओगे, या आपको वैराग्य भी सिखाएगा। डिजायर में दम बहुत है। How we channelize is important. Bhagwan says, so it serves your real interest. Dhruva, he says, for example, retired tapas in the forest. After winning, in order to fulfill desire, उनके फादर के गोद में बैठा था, उनकी जो सुरुचि, उनकी स्टेप मदर थी, उन्होंने उसको उतार दिया और अपने बच्चे को बैठा दिया। वो जाके अपनी मदर को पूछता है, ध्रुवा, सुनीति को, कि मुझे ऐसे ऐसे किया गया। कहती, ऐसे संसारिक माँ बाप से क्यों मांगते हो? जाके मांगना है तो विश्व के माँ बाप से मांगो, उस अंत प्रभु से मांगो। And then as he's going, Narada sees he's very determined, tries to stop in the forest, says, he looks very determined, no, I have to find out. My mother has told. विश्वास देखिए मदर की बातों का। कहता है, ठीक है, तुम जा रहे हो तो ये याद रखना, ओम भगवते वासुदेवाय। And he goes one pair, एक पैर में, as the scripture would say, he was meditating, and when Lord Narayana came, he did not open the eyes, brothers and sisters, as I've read. उसकी अंतरात्मा में उन्होंने नारायण का दर्शन किया और तब उनकी आंखें खुली। And that's what Bhagwan says, that remember, searching for a piece of glass, Dhruva got a diamond, looking out for water, he got Amrita. It is some illness or trouble that has brought you to me. अगर दुख कष्ट नहीं होता, भगवान के पास कौन आता? कोई नहीं पूछने आता। Everybody comes because they have got something, because we are arthis, artharthis. You know, we're not jigyasu, we're not even, mumuksha. We are only on the first two stage. कुछ होता है तो हम जाते हैं, कुछ ट्रेडिंग के लिए जाते हैं भगवान के पास। Okay, and then he says, trouble that has brought you to me, having come, you secure a book of bhajans, take a picture, start sadhana. It is your journey, the avatars come. Do not be downhearted that your troubles do not cease. You do not see the cause. You grieve that someone belonging to you has passed away, as if he was born to your sake. And last time I remember Brother Siddharth was saying, whenever in any किसी भी रेस में, जिंदगी की रेस में, अगर आप उस वर्ड जी भगवान को जोड़ दीजिए तो वो ग्रेस हो जाता है। कितना पावरफुल स्टेटमेंट है ये, सोच के देखिए। और यही होता है जो हम हर एक्टिविटी को डिविनाइज करना चाहते हैं। इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू कनेक्ट गॉड समवेयर द अदर। क्या भगवान खुश होंगे? इज ही वॉचिंग? इज ही गोइंग टू रियली लाइक व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू डू? दीज आर इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग। व्हाट आई एम गोइंग टू स्पीक, इज गोइंग टू हर्ट समबडी, द गॉड विद इन। और भगवान कोई ऐसा एलियन नहीं जो और इन रूम में आएंगे, वो किसी न किसी के रूप में हमारे सामने प्रकट हो जाएंगे। जब तुलसीदास को कहा गया कि तुम्हें राम का दर्शन होगा, और तुम स्वप्न आया था कि वहां देखो, वहां बैठा एक आदमी, वो तुम्हें बताएगा। वो गए, वहां पे हनुमान जी बैठे थे, हनुमान जी ने कहा तुम्हें राम का दर्शन होगा और जरूर कराएंगे। और अगले दिन वो बैठते हैं, अपना रामायण रामचरितमानस पढ़ रहे होते हैं, लिख रहे होते हैं, और उसके बाद एक बालक आता है, बहुत ही नन्हा बालक आता है। तुलसीदास अपने उसमें रहते हैं, उसको कुछ खिलाते पिलाते वो चले जाता है। फिर हनुमान जी आते, कहते हैं तुमने राम का दर्शन किया? बोले कहाँ किया, कोई आया नहीं। बोलो तो फिर वो 20 साल का वो जो बालक आया था वो कौन था? अगेन लुक एट दिस स्टेटमेंट, करेक्ट? कण कण में भगवान है। अगर वो बंदा आया तो उसमें भी ईश्वर है। हैव वी गॉट द विजन, इनसाइट, विच SAI? डू वी हैव दैट इनसाइट टू सी दैट? It is important for us to see as Sai devotees, and then only race will become grace, brothers and sisters. And then I would like to bring you, how do we control desires? Now in US, this man Walter Mischel, he was a Stanford University professor. He did a lot of research. So at that time in 1970s, I think, yeah. So he did a marshmallow experiment. So what he did was, he gathered the children of age, I think 5 to 10, put them in a room, put one plate with 2 marshmallows and one plate with 1 marshmallows. And he said, okay, if you are able to resist till I come back, you'll get this marshmallow and 2 more. And if you want, you can eat anytime. There's no problem. This is a famous marshmallow experience. So some of the children succumbed immediately. They were looking here, there, and then slowly eating and keeping. I have the video, but I didn't have time. I'll put the link. And then there were some kids who could resist and waited for the person to come out after 10 minutes and did not eat the marshmallows. And the thing did not end here, brothers and sisters. What happened, this Stanford guy, his daughter also got admitted eventually in, and she was one of the persons in this experiment. She got admitted into Stanford, and they started researching after 20 years what's happening with those 50 kids that they had experimented. Brothers and sisters, you will be amazed to see what happened with those guys. Those who could manage to control, did not eat the marshmallows, their lives were compared with the ones who succumbed to it. And this is a small reading on the video. Maybe you can hear this. Let me see.
An interesting experiment conducted by psychologist Walter Mischel, a professor at Stanford University, which began in the 1960s. Children were given the marshmallow test between 1968 and 1974. After this, Walter Mischel divided the 2 groups on pen and paper, not tell the children anything. 14 years later, he went back to those children, and he found amazing differences between the 2 groups. He went and interviewed their parents, their classmates, their teachers, and he found those children, who were able to control themselves, on average did better in academics, in co-curricular activities, in sports. They were regarded as more confident, self-controlled, they are more successful, they have higher income, lower drug addiction rate, higher SAT scores, and were better at maintaining close relationships. And the other group gets significantly lower SAT scores. It's amazing, just a small thing, a little bit of self-restraint. I want to do this and I do it, and the other person says, I want to do this, but I can't do it, just this difference. How is it that our ability to delay gratification, with a simple test of willpower in childhood, can predict so much of how our lives play out?
So again, this speaks about sealing on desires, the control, subconscious part of that programming which was brought in these kids and tested. It helped them to become a better citizen. Brothers and sisters, sealing on desires. When Geeta Mohan Ramji, she was speaking about one of her experiences, her children, when they got the first computer, they came and told Swami, Swami, we have got a computer. And you know what is that, Swami? Swami, www. Swami said, what is that www? He said, World Wide Web. Swami was very fascinated. Actually, Swami said, yes, it is the World Wide Web. And brothers and sisters, today we say, how the World Wide Web has really blocked us. The blockchain, you call it, has blocked the chain with the divine within us. The artificial intelligence has taken over the spiritual intelligence. It's a tremendous prison that we are in, brothers and sisters. And not only that, it has become mano moolam, it became money moolam idam jagat. The whole thing has changed to money, money, world, world, world. And what did Swami give an answer for that www? Swami said, in the spiritual parlance, it is the same www, but it is work, worship, and wisdom. He told those little boys who were with the computer fascinated, go on with the computer, but remember the higher wwws. One deals with your karma yoga, helps you to get around and help people in your work. The worship then deals with the bhakti yoga, and the last one with the jnana yoga. How a beautiful sublimation of those words that Swami made us understand, and for generations to come to understand the beautiful interpretation of this. And as we spoke a little bit briefly, try to understand this happiness. The equation is equal to desires fulfilled divided by desires entertained. Now let's look at this. If suppose you have desires entertained more, your happiness will go down, because you're trying to find window shopping, do something, you can't do it, and all the struggle is going on. So number of desires increase, so happiness has gone down. On the other hand, if you entertain lesser number of desires, your happiness grows up, brothers and sisters. It's important. Also important is not only sealing on desires, another COD aspect is completeness of desire. Let's say you have a chocolate, or a child is having a chocolate. Normally a child will try to have 5, 6 at a time. Do this experiment with the children in the Bal Vikas. Give them one and let them have it full. Complete it gradually. Then what will happen? There will be a spacing. There will be a control, and those things will also set in. Okay. And Bhagavan said, minimum desires. The person who has minimum desire is the richest person, and the person who has maximum desire is the poorest person. How beautiful, how simple, but how profound it is. It is actually the case. हम क्यों भागते हैं दुनिया में? क्योंकि हमने इतने जंजाल बना लिए. There was one professor who went to Swami, please help me to remove Maya. Maya नहीं जाता Swami, इतना मैं साधना करता हूँ. ये रेडियो साईं मैंने सुना. Swami बोले, अच्छा, you want Maya to go? Okay, तुम्हारा नाम क्या है? What is your wife's name? What is your child name? What is your daughter's name? What is your mother's name? What did your father do? And barrage of questions were put, and then he was answering everything. So everything. And finally Swami said, "Arey baap re, itna sab malum, Maya kaise jayega?" You are so connected, so involved. Your brain has got no reserve capacity to take anything. Why? Because all desires are full. खाली करना पड़ेगा, तभी तो कुछ नया अंदर आएगा. So be less is blessed, and sometimes to lose is to win. When you lose all this old programming, you're actually winning into the new, program to the heaven. All right. So ये seesaw का खेल है. God, spirituality, अध्यात्म और desire और अहंकार एक साथ नहीं चलता. आपको fight नहीं करना है अंधेरे को, आपको दिया जलाना है. Correct? It's very important that once we start getting increasing love for God or Swami's love or activity, आप देखिए, आप ये जो स्टडी सर्कल होता है, ब्रदर सिद्धार्थ इतना जगह वो करते रहते हैं. उनको समय है क्या कोई भी चीज के? नहीं. उनका पूरा जो सिस्टम है वो साईं में हो चुका है. करेक्ट? इट इज सो इंपॉर्टेंट फॉर अस टू अंडरस्टैंड. जब आप जगह ही नहीं दोगे बाकी चीज को आने का, तो कैसे आएगा? तो आपके अंदर में सिर्फ साईं छोड़ के कुछ रहेगा ही नहीं. It's important learning for us. Remember, so to fight ignorance, to fight andhakar, we don't have to fight them. We have to just light a lamp, right? And as Swami Vivekananda beautiful said, darkness is nothing but invisible light. So then you go to the next level where you feel, अरे उसमें भी रोशनी है. ईश्वर का तो प्रकोप हर जगह है, प्रकाश हर जगह है. Now, it's desires we knew are a bundle of thoughts, right? It comes from the thoughts. So very important is sow a thought, reap an action. A very important part. What kind of thought we are sowing? Sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a tendency. अब देखिए कैसे चरित्र निर्माण हो रहा है एक संकल्प से. Sow a tendency, reap a character, and sow a character, reap a destiny. Brothers and sisters, can anything be more powerful than what Swami has given? It starts from the thought, the desires which make up these thoughts, which are made up of the desires. How important it is to control them, calibrate them, align them, and control them. Yad bhavam tab bhavati. And once we have controlled, once we have started looking divinity within, we start the whole जो चश्मा पहनेंगे उसी तरह का संसार हमें दिखने लगेगा. And then of course, very important part, as we saw in the structure, organization structure, the sense organs, because ahankar plays through the sense organs. When buddhi is at the side and your ego is prominent, it plays through the sense organ. The whole world enters your being through these 5 gateways. Correct? These 5 sense organs are very, very important, and we have to have the buddhi, the charity, are always ignited to keep a check on what is coming in and what is going out. Once we are doing that, all the sattvic components, when you see initially was rajasic, tamasic, more sattvic component starts increasing and your being starts changing. आपको पता भी नहीं चलेगा आप कैसे महात्मा बन गए, आप कैसे बदल गए. केवल संगत का असर होता है. You know, when a drop starts, Swami Vivekananda said, from the cloud, that drops, when it comes with the dust, it becomes dirty. When it comes to the gutter, it becomes a gutter water. When it comes to the oyster, you know, on the oyster, it becomes a pearl. Drop में अपनी खूबी नहीं है, जो संगत उसने लिया उसकी खूबी है. Desires, what kind of desires we entertain is very important. Will make us what we are going to be in, and we should be careful about not only the food. And Bhagwan says, as an वैसा मन. So one अन्न जो है सिर्फ खाने की चीज नहीं है. What we are getting through our senses, those are also very important. All the 5 gateways. Okay, क्या हम श्रवण कर रहे हैं, क्या देख रहे हैं. And that is why the मीरा का जो भजन है इतना सुंदर है. इतना सुंदर है वो भजन. कौन सा है? ऐसी लागी लगन मीरा हो गई मिगन, राना ने विष दिया मानो अमृत पिया. एंड देन ही से, है आंख वो जो शाम का दर्शन किया करे, है आंख वो जो शाम का दर्शन किया करे, है हाथ जो प्रभु चरण में सेवा किया करे, बेकार वो मुख है जो रहे व्यर्थ बातों में. Your mouth is useless, tongue is useless if it is in the useless talks. मुख वो है जो भगवान का वर्णन किया करे. You know, it's so beautiful, that bhajan. It talks about the 5 faculties, 5 senses, how we can utilize. And this food, what we take through 5, decides the desires we are going to entertain, brothers and sisters. Try to keep a watchdog on these guys. These 5 arshvarga, these 5 senses, what is coming and going on. You got to be the watchkeeper. Trust me. That's the only way we can move towards this healing on desires. Let me break it into a few points. Worldly desires are desires that bind you. Divinized desires are desires that liberate you. What are the worldly desires? Let's look into this. The worldly desire reminds ego. जो देवत्व desire है, जो ईश्वर desire है, which a divine flavor, it resigns ego, it cancels ego. The worldly is to prove that you are something. The Devic desire is to improve that we want to be a better human. The worldly desire is dealing with the side what you saw. The spiritual desire is dealing with the inside, जो आपने अंदर देखा, intuition. Worldly desire believes in information technology. Spiritual desire is in transformation technology. हम कितना receive किए information वो नहीं, हम कितना transform हुए. Worldly desire deals with making name. The spiritual desire is busy with taking name, nama smarana. The worldly desire deals with artificial intelligence. Spiritual desire is artificial, अपने दिल के इंटेलिजेंस. जो आप दिल, और जो उस दिन कबीर ब्रदर बात कर रहे थे, यहाँ और यहाँ की दूरी केवल 1 फीट का है, लेकिन बहुत लंबा दूरी है ये. कई बार बरसों और जन्म लग जाते हैं तय करने में. It's very important to feel the heart. Yad bhavam tad bhavi. It's not yad vicharam. Yad bhavam tad bhavati. Worldly desire deals with what is the next one? It deals with valuables, and the spiritual desire deals with values. Worldly desire is bar and darbar. Remember, brothers and sisters, worldly desire deals with party. Spiritual desire deals with put apart thee. You know, somebody said very nicely, apart I. Huh.
Sairam, time is, I think so. It's
yeah, okay.
So if you can conclude.
Yes, I'll conclude now. So it is very important. It deals, we have to understand, then we know which desire is going which side, whether it is improving us as a person. Remember, we are all his Bangaru. उन्होंने भंगार को बंगारू बना दिया है. हम सब भंगार थे, उनके शरण में आके थोड़ा बहुत कैरेट का लेयर, थोड़ी बहुत गोल्ड पॉलिशिंग हो गई है. With that words, I think I'll end this over here. It was a real pleasure to connect with you all. Let me stop the sharing. There was some more, but we can always. Thanks, brother Siddharth. I'm sorry if I exceeded the time, but क्या करें, ये नशा ही ऐसा है.
I think very beautifully put. You practically पूरा 1 साल का जितना भी सत्संग किया था, it all got summarized very clearly, connecting all the links. I think it reiterates the fact that, you know, what we have been saying, that spiritual topics can never be seen in isolation. They're all interconnected, and this is exactly what beautifully brought about. And it was quite an absorbing session with a lot of examples, backed by a lot of experiments. And you can actually see the chat panel, the way people have expressed their thoughts as you were going through the slides. So it was not just a visual treat. I think it was a mental treat. It was completely an absorbing treat for everybody. It came as a Bhagwan's prasadam for all of us today, and very beautifully done. Thanks a lot for all the efforts that you have gone through and you put across. very beautifully connected. It's actually a textbook for spirituality, if I may use the word. It is actually like a textbook. So when we look at the slides, each slide can be looked at, a self-practice, a chapter by itself to practice for all of us. So very beautifully done, and grateful to Bhagwan for giving us this opportunity to listen to you and absorb. In fact, lots to absorb. I think we'll have to revise. The textbook can't be seen one shot, and kind of everything is inside. We are yet to reach that level of Vivekananda where we just take a book and in 10 minutes it is all inside us. All of us will have to go through, read it again, imbibe it, like Shravanam, Mananam, Nididasam karna padega. 1000 baar shayad to absorb all of this. But one thing is, if we implicitly follow whatever is spoken today, I think nirvana or liberation is not far off. Even इसमें से एक slide भी हम लोग practice कर ले, I think we will reach the ocean, we will cross the ocean of samsara and go on the other side and reach Bhagwan. So I think it's a very, very beautiful, and I'm hoping if Pratibha aunty is okay, we should invite Bindu more often. I know time is a challenge. It's 9 p.m. Starting time for you, but maybe you should take more sessions for all of us.
Saram.
Anybody has any questions? Yeah. Sorry.
Thanks, brother. No, thanks. I'm overwhelmed. It is just that आपको भगवान ने बहुत कृपा की है, सबको की है. We have to take the help of the aids, to share, because that's the way 12 years I've been doing in Singapore. I've not known any other way to do it. It's
very
Ashu
nice.
is also there.
Ashu, yes.
Yeah, I thought he is not attended to it.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything. Beautiful session.
Yeah, Ashu.
Yeah. Anybody has any questions? Yeah. Anybody has any questions? Good time to ask.
Madam, sir, that was a very beautiful session. This is Sujata here. So many things that you said are so practically true, especially where you said there have been times when we didn't have the time to sleep for more than 6 hours. We had to, that much of work we had. Now, when we look back, we realize Baba kept us so busy so that we don't do other things. We are practically cut off from our family, but that was toxic. So Baba, so whatever he does, when Swami says, you take one step towards me, I take 10 towards you, he was actually scripting something better. It was very tough for us, but he was scripting something better for us. But so what you have said, and the practical reality of when you say avoid gossip, that's the biggest waste of time. It's very difficult to implement that, because a person who tries to get out of gossip yet live in a normal society is spoken about the most. I know that because I have been spoken about. Then when we go back to Baba, and Shirdi Sai has said that he's washing your paap ka jola with your tongue. Tell him thanks, whoever is gossiping about you. So those things, you tied it up very beautifully today with desires, like how we are the ones who are triggering all that. That is our own mind which is triggering all these things that happen to us. Hi Ram, thank you.
A wonderful session, Binduji. I think a lot to introspect after this. I think you have opened up too many doors. इतना नहीं सोचा था कि desires are even affecting our simple desires affect the world also. But thank you for making me aware of this. I really want to hear the recording again a couple of times and save it, because it has really one now I think बहुत deeply सोचना पड़ेगा और देखना पड़ेगा अंदर कि क्या करना है आगे. So thank you very much for sharing all your thoughts. Thank you.
Can I say something? Bindu brother, it was awesome. It's everything. Swami's entire teachings rolled into one session. I mean, it was really beautiful. And the effort you've put in, really beautiful. Thank you so much.
इसमें हमारा शुद्धिकरण हो जाता है. When you get involved, you get engaged with this, you undergo a silent revolution within you, not knowingly, and then it comes to anybody else. The water experiment is so vivid. It says the molecules get distorted, or as पहला इफेक्ट आपके सोच का, वाटर का आपके बॉडी में पहले होता है, तब दूसरे को होता है, आप कुछ कहते हैं. So always remember, we are the first recipient of our outburst, whether good or bad, whatever it is.
Yes, definitely.
बिंदु भैया, साईराम, थैंक यू सो मच. आपसे ये पूछना था कि ceiling on desires. So we are on this journey to control our desires. What are the benchmarks for us to know that we are more in control of our desires? What would you say would be the benchmark? हम कोशिश कर रहे हैं, हम सोच रहे हैं, हम मे बी वन ऑफ टाइम अपनी लाइफ में इम्प्लीमेंट भी करते हैं, बट बेंचमार्क क्या होता है कि हाँ हम वाकई अपने डिजायर्स को एटलीस्ट वी आर कंट्रोलिंग देम और वी आर रिड्यूसिंग देम.
मैं अपने केस में बता सकता हूँ कि when you start staying at home more, when you start doing Swami is getting more engaged in Swami's activities means चाहे वो नारायण सेवा या कुछ भी, जहां it shows that you have already deflected in certain direction, and that is one of the very important benchmarks. जैसे हम हर वीकेंड में मान लीजिए बाहर चले जाते थे, और अगर मैं 2 वीकेंड 4 वीकेंड में मैं इसमें रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ, सोच रहा हूँ, समझ रहा हूँ, कुछ निचोड़ने का, then you have already known that for so many weeks or days you have already removed the other thought processes. जब आपका भटकना बंद हो जाए, that is the biggest benchmark, and then that span you have to calculate how many days you could get involved in this without getting bothered about anything else, and that is how I look at it. I don't know how brother Siddharth wants to put it.
Correct. तो आप कह रहे हैं कि basically first you control your physical movements, remain more centered and grounded, and that will lead and think more about controlling your desires. And the more you reflect on that, the more one is able to control one's desires.
Yes. So physical means physical more important is mental. As you can see in the COVID times, what has happened, we didn't learn our lessons the proper way. So the nature brought us to a grinding halt, correct? So why isolate? Because I was so late, so isolate. Now, abhi alag baith ke baithne ka. So these are important things to understand. We were forced. Why? Because we didn't go in. So
beautiful, beautifully explained.
Yeah. So it's important that we must think more on mentally, spiritually how we are rather than physical. Physical तो पैर हमें मंदिर ले जाएगा, हमें सेवा में ले जाएगा, बिल्कुल जाएंगे. भटकना मतलब संसार में भटकना. Again, we saw the spiritual and the worldly desire. I think that is where we have to see, where we engaged. Thanks.
Sarah, thank you.
Hello, let me also say, Bindu, just one sentence, I'm proud of you. Swami bless you.
Yeah, she says always, and in childhood, I used to give her 2 rupees to get favors from her. So just joking. Yeah, thanks. Thanks. But Siddharth has played a very important role in all of us for last so many years and sessions. I've been listening to what he has been arranging. Yes, brother, ईश्वर है, लेकिन आपका नाम सिद्धार्थ है. सिद्धार्थ से ही बुद्ध बना था. So आप हम लोग के लिए उसी तरह की जगह रखते हैं, and it's important that you keep holding us like an anchor. Otherwise, we are like a rudderless ship. We don't know which direction to go. So somewhere you give us a direction always.
Agree, bilkul, 100%.
Agree.
Siddharth and Ashu has always been there.
Yes. Sairam to Ashu. I didn't see. I can see him now.
He is there.
Sairam, and thank you very much for these sessions. Make a big difference, especially during the lockdown. Sairam.
Siddharth, let's Samasta Loka.
Okay, so I think since there are no more questions, we'll end the session. We have touched 7:45 in India, so but I think it is very, very absorbing. I think all of us will eagerly wait for the video recording to come so that we can revise our lessons. I don't know if Bindu Bhaiya plans to conduct an examination test for us next time. With the syllabus out, we'll have to see. But fantastic, and this session will remain etched in our memory for a long time to come. And would request Bindu Bhaiya to make time and to take up some of these sessions, some of the topics for us in future.
Zarur, brother.
Okay, so let's end with Samasta Loka, and we will close the session. Oh. समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु समस्तलोकाः सुखिनो भवन्तु शांति शांति शांति। जय बोलो भगवान श्री सत्य साई बाबा जी की जय।